So I have a PowerPoint to share with you, and I do so with great humility. I'm the newcomer here. I've been officially on the job for 7 months. So this is presented as a draft to reflect back to you the things that I'm learning about and hearing from members of the community. I am looking for feedback from you and from others to see if what I've identified I've gotten right. I feel like I'm on the right track because I don't know that there will be much of any surprises here. I feel like you as a committee in engaging for a superintendent search, just by the nature of the questions that you asked, you know your community and you knew and know the challenges and the opportunities that exist here. So, as well as the strengths. So I don't think that there will be many surprises, but I am looking forward to sharing with you all that I've learned and what I've been working on, and look for your input. So as you know, I started a transition plan back in February, met with many of you at that time and began the process of meeting with those closest to the superintendent's office, and then officially launched an entry in July, specifically looking for data that I could hear from people, meeting with community members in the district. What could I read about, including data and documentation, and making observations in classroom, schools, and community spaces all around an essential question of what are the strengths and opportunities here in Barnstable. I may have missed a few things along the way, but I've tried to catalog some of my activities in terms of who I've been listening to and meeting with, whether individually or in groups. Really within the schools, talking with you as school committee members and meeting with administrators. I met with the faculty and staff of each building through voluntary faculty meetings, and I conducted a survey back in November that 355 people returned. I convened and had an opportunity to meet with faculty and staff members of color who shared their specific perspective, which I think is important to note. I've been meeting with union leadership and rekindling relationships there through monthly meetings. True delight was meeting with students, having met with focus groups for pizza at BUES and BIS. Those groups were selected by counselors and the principal and assistant principals specifically to broadly represent the diversity of the student body. And at BHS, I met with 6 different groups of students. I met with the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. I met with a group of 8th, 9th, and 10th graders. I met with 11th and 12th graders. I met with the top 5% of the senior class. I met with students who are multilingual learners, and I met with students who identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color to have specific focus group conversations. All in all, I met with about 80 students, and the high school students either enjoyed breakfast or sandwiches.
More for you.
1,016. I just noticed or as I just mentioned with Chairperson Judge's question, I met with families in recent weeks. About 70 people had signed up, although a few folks didn't show. And I attended a CPAC and a new organization that Karina De Silva, our EL director, has started, an LPAC, which is a Parent Advisory Council for English learner families. I've also been meeting with people in the community, including the town manager and assistant town manager, as well as some town department staff. Invited elected officials to meet, including members of the town council, and I met with several of our elected representatives here on the Cape and Islands. I met with the police chief and officers from our SRO unit. I met with 4 of the 5 fire chiefs within town. I had a 5th meeting, but he was called away to an emergency. Met with the regional emergency management personnel. I met with and took a tour of Cape Cod Regional Technical High School. I met with Bob Sanborn there, and I also met with the executive director and took a tour of Sturgis. Have to orient my east. Had to orient myself with geographically, but I took a tour of Sturgis East. I've been getting to know the regional superintendents and the Cape Cod Collaborative officials, also having taken a tour at the school within Barnstable that they have over at Bumps River Road. I met with a few Cape Cod Community College officials, several representatives from local mental health agencies. I attended a business improvement district breakfast and had a couple follow-up meetings with individuals from that, and have gotten to know some of the representatives from Barnstable No Place for Hate. There may be more, and I'm sorry if I forgot anybody, but the community has been incredibly welcoming and eager to share their perspective and identify opportunities with the schools. Continuing on, also looking at data and document review. I'm sure there's things that I'm overlooking, but policies and our procedures and forms, reviewing collective bargaining agreements, even participating in some finalization of some of those, previous budgets, student achievement data, human resources materials, presentations and expectations that are relevant to our town finance office, district and school handbooks. I spent the summer really kind of poring over all of those and gave them a lot of careful attention. The athletic handbooks, any program reviews that we have done recently, including in areas like special education, student services, and athletics, and the program of studies. Available curriculum materials and report cards, registration materials, school and district improvement plans, publicly available information through the Department of Education, our discipline data, as well as our discipline materials and suspension letters. Kind of randomly gone into standards for success and looked at observation and evaluation materials. Looked at previous meeting agendas for school committee and leadership team. The principals know that I'm kind of scanning in the background, not so much to micromanage, but just so I can stay in tune to what's going on across the district, so they share their meeting and professional development agendas with me. I review school newsletters, have taken a look at our websites and social media accounts. I look at newspaper articles and read the Cape Cod Times daily, and selected, certainly not all, of our vendor contracts. In terms of making observations, with the exception of the month of January, I've been doing monthly visits to schools with principals, although I do go more frequently as needed, but we have some regular meetings to discuss matters of importance to our classrooms and workspaces. Touring the buildings and grounds with both the principals and facilities director. Touring specifically with the athletic director of the high school grounds, and attendance at selected events as my schedule allows. I'm looking forward to having some open room now that some of my evening sessions are done. I'm missing the winter sports season, so I look forward to getting to some of those events, as well as some of the things that are coming up, like Mary Poppins. These will not end. I will continue to engage. This is, in many ways, part of my regular practice and how I engage in my work. So the meetings and the document review and data and observations will not end. When I met with the students, I asked all of the groups to share a word with me at the end of our discussion to describe their experience. And I told them that they could repeat the same word, and I put it in a Wordle word cloud engine. And this is what your students, our students, are saying about their school experience. The larger the word, the more frequently that word showed up in the conversation as they were sharing their words with me, and the number one word that came up was diversity. The second word was fun. That came more from the younger students that I met with, and the other words are representative of what the kids were saying. There are some, there's a great variety in these words. In terms of challenging and complicated. There's also respectful, amazing, and safe. I did include seguro and difficile to recognize directly what some of our multilingual learners were saying, seguro meaning safe and difficile meaning difficult. Not all experiences are reflected as positive. I noted one student chose racism. And indeed, our conversations, which I conducted with the principals, uncovered some previously unreported bullying. And I assure you that the principal is following up with the appropriate response. So the first part of the question is, what are the strengths within the Barnstable Public Schools, and what are the opportunities? So first, the strengths, and again, this is a draft, and so I am open to input from you and others in the community. But similar to the student saying that the word that encapsulates their experience with diversity, multiple people over the course of the conversations that I've had have shared their perspective that the greatest strength of our community is the diversity among our students and families. Within all of these strengths, there also exist opportunities to strengthen what are our strengths and to capitalize on them. And just as I noted that there were some really positive experiences, there are also some negative experiences that our students are feeling, and that was also reflected at times by faculty. So I think it's important that we take steps to make sure that each member of the community feels a sense of belonging. And I think we're doing so. Unified sports is one example, but other things that people noted that would go a long way include things like reducing language barriers and a real desire for an increased level of family engagement. And I'll talk more about that when we get to opportunities. Another area of strength that was noted over and over again is the dedication of our faculty and staff, which was cited among numerous community groups that I spoke with. And then data is supportive of that in terms of the educators tending to be very committed to the district. We have people who have spent a lot of time here in their career. They have grown here. They have developed throughout their career. And our data is above the state level for retention consistently. And then I have personally witnessed and observed numerous times that Barnstable educators have rallied around students and families as well as each other. And then third is a true strength, I think, and it's very unique and very specific to Barnstable. And it has to do with our location in the region. It has to do with our size. And my quote is at the bottom. Sorry, it's getting a little cut off, which is that the breadth of opportunities afforded to students in Barnstable would be the envy of any school district in the Commonwealth. I think if there's any surprises that I come to see is that we may not shout it out enough, we may not celebrate enough, we may not recognize it enough, and really truly coming in with a lens from off Cape, from Franklin, who was trying to do many of these same things, this really would be the envy of any school district in the Commonwealth. And when I talk about that, I'm speaking about things like our enrichment opportunities, some of which maybe took a hit during COVID, but I see people bringing back with gusto, including the fine and performing arts. SEL came up loud and clear, with people being very proud that Barnstable is a SEL leader in the Cape Cod region. Our high school course offerings are incredible, and the ones that I've selected are ones that I haven't seen elsewhere, although there's plenty of creative ones that don't exist in most schools, but fashion, cartooning and animation, understanding diversity, criminal justice, Black studies, global issues, entrepreneurship. Finance stood out to me. My stepdaughter is a sophomore in college, and she picked marketing as her major, but she took her first finance course and said if she had known what finance involved, she would have gone into finance as a major. She didn't know marketing either. It was kind of a... She actually started in hospitality. So. But I guess my point is that just offering all of these gives students an opportunity to see what they might like or what they might not want to do. Music technology, hip hop, the influence and trends, coastal ecology, pathology and biotechnology. I just went on and on and on. This is a long presentation, so I won't continue with this list, but if you just open up the program of studies, it's really unbelievable what students have available to them. In addition, at the high school, the career pathways are truly noteworthy. with students being able to pursue areas of interest and passion in the health careers, environmental science, engineering, business, education, culinary, law, society, and criminal justice, and computer science. Elsewhere in the district, or throughout the entire district, Gateway has come up as a real strength. I think Barnstable ought to be proud for having a gifted and talented program and for having done so for so long in a state that doesn't mandate it or even really recognize it like other states do. Recently, we've been having conversations about the ways in which the current director has been expanding access for students to Gateway and reducing barriers and opening up Gateway for more children. But the students over and over again talked about how Gateway, and I think in many similar ways PBL falls into the same category, really supported them. It was their passion, it's what they loved, and really drew them to and engaged them in their schooling. The special education services are strong. I think because of our size, we offer a strong continuum that smaller districts would not be able to do. We have 2 alternative education programs at the high school with ACE and Project Excel, and then a focus of PBL in multiple locations, which you heard about directly tonight. In terms of opportunities, we have extensive co-curriculars, extracurriculars, and enrichments, including over 50 clubs at Barnstable High School. Our athletics is strong, and Andre King talked notably about that tonight and at other points in time. Fine arts and performing arts. I think just walking around the high school, you can see the investment in the fine arts with the murals that are on the walls. As one example, the performing arts with the Performing Arts Center and the comeback that is being made by our performance groups. We have middle school opportunities, and we are bringing back field trips. And then also, I think very unique to Barnstable, a number of examples came up already this evening in terms of community relationships and partnerships. We have some very generous and devoted local donors, including the Cobb Trust, the Skendi Foundation, Cape Cod 5, among others. We have a lot of partners that sponsor students with high school internships, but also at the younger grades, BCIS with the enrichment clusters, relationship with Cape Cod Community College, health service agencies in Barnstable. As I had mentioned, the mental health groups had reached out to me. Parent-teacher organizations supporting students, particularly in the younger schools. The town recreation department affords students a wealth of opportunities with HYCC in particular, and then a number of community groups that are invested in both schools and the overall well-being of the community. So it really is a remarkable, remarkable place to be. I've identified 4 areas of opportunity. Again, I don't think that they're going to come as a huge surprise, although I welcome your input and feedback. The first one, I've lumped a few things in an area around a strong desire and need to come together as a community. People shared sentiments of feeling disconnected. Many people I spoke with cited that the 2 grade span schools, grade 4, 5, grade 6, 7, are particular concerns in terms of continuity. But I would say that the configuration of BUES and BIS is not the only driver of these feelings. People have reflected a sense of loss. I would say tonight we heard how things are making a comeback. So the enrichment clusters, this is the first time that they've done them in 3 years. The field trips, some of the senior events that our student envoys talked about, people are mourning that loss and getting back to some of the events, and people have remarked over and over how they'd like to see more of those, more of that positivity. People are reflecting feelings of fatigue and stress and trauma-based responses. We've all been through a huge collective trauma with the pandemic. But there's also, I think, individuals who have a lot going on in their lives, students and families and staff alike. And we're seeing an escalation of maladaptive behaviors, and that's causing stress. We've talked a little bit about that tonight, and we'll be spending more time addressing that. I've seen some pockets where I think the curriculum is discontinuous. This came up in some budget conversations in particular. So I think there's an opportunity to create more of a through line in terms of our curriculum. And faculty have reflected wanting to feel like part of a more cohesive whole. Heard people remark around a desire for more consistent and positive communication, as well as seeking opportunities for additional clarity. That might be because in places we're working towards more consistency of practice. The pandemic, but it might not all be the pandemic, I think really threw everybody's systems up in the air, and districts everywhere are putting the pieces back together and maybe coming back together a little differently. But there's also been a lot of turnover. There's been a lot of turnover of leadership, and that can create some questions of clarity, questions of expectations. So there's an opportunity there. A need to continue to work toward a sense of belonging. It's something that has been talked about previous to my arrival, but again, I think that there are some folks saying that that there may be some barriers to kind of feeling that they truly belong, and I think we can work towards those. Encouragement to focus on the positive and celebrate successes, and then I also see an opportunity to create some priorities. Sometimes it feels like there's so much going on and you can go in all sorts of directions. And so to that end, both Joe and Andre talked about a vision of a graduate, which I have also talked a little bit with Mike about, and it's something that I think we can do to bring, to initially, there's a lot of work to do, I think, to build and foster a culture, but to work together to vision and work towards a common goal of what the community sees as a consensus of the skills that our students need for their future. And then we align budget, we align our goals, we align decision-making towards that vision. And so I'm looking forward to that. We talked about it as part of the subcommittee. And it's tied with the accreditation process at the high school, but in my mind, that would make it feel far too like a compliance exercise, and I think doing it district-wide would be really, really meaningful for everybody. So in the second area, kind of continuing to focus on academics and SEL, and in that SEL realm, I would hang a sign on behavior, recognizing that we have an escalation of maladaptive behaviors in our school buildings. Seeing a desire and need to focus on instruction following remote and hybrid learning models. What are some of the best things that we can take away from those periods of time, but what did we also learn about the power of in-person learning, the strength of relationships, the importance of the relationship between the teacher and students and among students? We know that we have an increased level of skill gaps among students. For me, I feel like that's pretty noticeable grades 4, 5, and 6, 7. When you go into a classroom and you see skill gaps there, and teachers are working really hard to address them, but how might we work smarter and provide the right supports to do so? Heard and have seen concerns about student engagement and concerns about student behavior and consequences. And I think they're linked to instruction. I think they're linked to the purpose of why we respond to behaviors is to educate children in order to change. In terms of the curriculum, as you know, there has been a purchase of software, Atlas Rubicon, so we have an opportunity for more documentation. This will help make curriculum more predictable, make it more transparent. There's an increased level of interest in what schools are teaching and questions from families about the curriculum. But it would also help people vertically understand what's happening above and below, as well as horizontally. And I heard from teachers K to 3 that they really want to work more across buildings. Key focus areas, we can't do everything all at once, so I would suggest having something of a predictable curriculum review cycle, so we spread it around and we kind of know what's coming. There's budget reasons for that, there's professional development reasons for that, there's also capacity reasons for that. And so literacy and math are on the horizon. Continuing to make sure that we're investing well in social emotional learning and providing the right types of interventions around behavior. English language development should, come as no surprise that there's more work to be done there in terms of the curriculum. Special education, making sure that we have a strong continuum of services for students, which is a huge challenge, not just for us within the district, but also I think in the field of special education, especially with staffing. Making sure we're including multiple perspectives. This is something that I heard from students and something that I heard from families as well as teachers. We talked about it a little bit tonight with Black History Month, making sure that multiple perspectives and diverse representation is within the curriculum. And one parent in particular spoke very eloquently about that as a vehicle to children feeling like they belong. And attending to students' mental and physical health is also an opportunity, an area of focus in this realm. The third opportunity, again, I feel like I'm reading some of your questions to me back to you tonight, but this is the sense that I've made of them, which is around, what does it mean to grow your own? And I think there is a real need for talent development. We have some significant staffing challenges, although I think we're faring better than perhaps I expected. But I can see the trends. We've got a high cost of living and not enough housing. We have a goal, a worthy goal of diversifying our educator workforce because of its positive impact on students. And we have some very hard to fill positions, including ones that are highly specialized roles, as well as really critical support positions like bus drivers, paraprofessionals, and substitute teachers. Our traditional recruitment and retention efforts are not as effective as they used to be. You've gotten more creative with bonuses, for example, but I think we need to have a concerted effort to do more. We've been talking a lot about developing career ladders and providing incentives. My understanding in talking with the union is that there may have been some of this in the past, putting a very intentional focus on retention. I know our data supports that we have good retention, but we want to make sure it stays that way. And we want to make sure it stays that way, especially for educators from diverse backgrounds who maybe some, kind of both here and then kind of in the field don't always feel like they fully belong, and engage in additional outreach. I think the opportunity to grow from within will require a specific and concerted focus on PD with human resources implications. And then we also, I think, have an opportunity to develop a strong PD plan for staff, which speaks a little bit to the idea of a vision of an educator. What do our educators need to support the vision we have for students? And then the last area, again, I don't think this will come as a surprise, is around facilities, enrollment, and future planning. So spending a lot of time looking at our buildings as a really important resource. We have a portfolio of aging school buildings. I think Mike and his team do a tremendous job at maintenance, but our oldest school, BCIS, was built in the 40s, and I think we have a couple that were built in the 50s. We have a significant list of capital improvement projects with additional ones to be planning for. We are looking at enrollment trends, with long-term seeing an overall decrease, but we've stabilized, and you'll see some tonight in the budget presentation, and we're also showing some signs of growth at the elementary schools. We're using our space differently too. We've got more specialized programs, we have more specialized services, and that requires us to rethink how space gets used. I already talked about concerns that were presented about two grade schools, and I feel that I need to kind of convey that there were members in the community expressing concerns about grade 8 at the high school. We have space constraints at many schools, as you know, which has brought up concerns about equity as well as adequacy. And we're anticipating the 3-year lease of portables at 2 of our sites to be coming this summer, but other needs are emerging. So it's an opportunity. I don't quite know what the ultimate sort of status will be, as we're awaiting 2 reports, one a facilities conditions assessment and one an enrollment forecast, which should give us a picture over the next decade of what we might expect for student enrollment. But that is another kind of big area. And that's not to say that other things didn't come up. Plenty of stuff came up, including, for example, public comment with the question about 7 periods for students at the high school. But I purposefully looked really big picture, really long term from the seat of superintendent and the entire system. Those other matters, didn't necessarily make it here, but I did hear lots and lots of other details that and have taken a lot in. So in terms of next steps, I'm seeking input from you and feedback from you, as well as we'll be sharing it with community stakeholders. Going to be talking about this with faculty and staff at next week's Professional Development Day, although I did share the presentation with them earlier this evening, with the idea that we, once I get the feedback and sort of codify this into some final strengths and opportunities, work with you and the leadership team, as well as other community members to develop some long-term goals. So I'd be happy to take any questions or hear your comments tonight, or input and feedback in the weeks to come.
Okay, excellent. Anybody have any questions? What do you want to? Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
I'd say very thorough.
Excellent.
Very thorough. I noticed you didn't put any graphs up there, so I'm just going to stop. Kristen must have told you not to, give you a warning not to put anything up there. But no, it was a great job. I'm glad to have you. Keep up the great work. Thanks.
Thank you. If you wanted any data, I mean, there are graphs behind some of this. I just kept it at a high level.
That was your copy. Joe had the graphs. Anybody else?
Yeah, just for me, add on to what Joe said, in terms of the breadth of information, looking as the superintendent from your chair at the macro lens. But as we are having the conversations, you noted certain priority areas. I think that the empirical weight, the amount of information that you've included in here, can be a foundation for the discussions that we're going to be having, so that when we're talking about these different issues, whatever the priority that is brought before us, we can discuss it from an empirical lens. I know that when things happen, we respond sometimes, very. Sometimes our response, can be in the moment, in terms of what's happening. Again, you noted trauma informed levels of stress, and so that impacts how we respond to a situation. But in order to get it right, you have to take a step back and look at the overall lens and the data that we have, to make the right decision, okay, rather than the split decision. And so, again, to Joe's point, very thorough, a year of work, of data gathering. But I just feel like now this is not just something that you did for a report because it's scheduled in the agenda and you have to do it as a part of your role, but this can be leaned on and relied upon when we're making informed decisions that we want to be effective in the moment and going forward.
Peter, you got anything, or are you all set?
All set, thanks.
Okay, all set. Okay, Kathy?
For the most part, I'm all set. I do agree it was very thorough, and you don't look exhausted, so, but you have to be exhausted with all those meetings, because I know there were a lot more meetings than what you even noted for this evening. When you were going through the interview process, I had found the profile of a graduate, and I had meant to bring it up to you and never had the chance, and so I was glad to see that you would like to incorporate that and develop one for Barnstable. That was one of the pieces that I found was unique about you, that you didn't bring to the table during your interviews, and I think the community will appreciate that, as well as the students, because I think it instills the purpose of why we're here K to 12 and then some beyond age 22. So I look forward to that profile of a graduate.
Excellent work.
Thank you.
Excellent work. I kind of know a little bit of how much work you've done on this, just because we kind of were talking as you were going through it, but the amount of hours you've put in just shows you how much you care and how you do want to make a difference. And you kind of look at this as like the footprint of the beginning, and like Andre said, this isn't just a report. I can guarantee you that our superintendent, this is her kind of taking it now and putting the rubber to the road. This is what she's going to use as kind of a good chunk of your guiding principles. And I also think it's always good to have somebody come from the outside and kind of take stock of whether it's a school department or a fire department or whatever the case may be, because you kind of have a different lens of looking at it from the outside. So, I mean, you're going to find things that are working, you're going to find things that aren't working, and like how you're bringing in a different knowledge of how you can fix those things. Because you kind of this is the way we do it in Barnstable, and you kind of bring in a different lens to that. So that's phenomenal, but excellent work.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
So anything else? Anybody else? Nothing?
No, I was just very thorough. I didn't mean to skip
No,
you.
it's okay.
I was very impressed, very impressed.
I'm exhausted. Just thinking about not to just even put the slides together, but actually do the things in the slides.
Well, like Kathy said, she kind of didn't even come close to put down the amount of meetings she had and the amount of people she met with. I know for a fact that there was we'd be here for another hour if she talked about all the people she really actually met with. So honestly, awesome job.
Thank you.
And very, and one of the things that she told me about that she found really neat about Barnstable is, and I kind of started thinking about it, is how much community support we have. Like, it's big, but it's still like that small town atmosphere. And she was like, yeah, one of the things is just how many people truly, it takes a village to raise kids, and like we truly bring that to life. And I kind of started to, she was telling me some of the things, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's just the way Barnstable does it, you know what I mean? But for her, it was like, wow, that's really cool. So to hear it from her, it was kind of neat when she started going through it with me. So thank you. And we will, if anybody has any questions or comments, just reach out to Sarah over the next couple of weeks, and
Yep.
she'll keep it going. So now we're going to move on.